Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Mayor's Community Policy Trust. I am Dr. Coral Evans, former mayor of the city of Flagstaff. Excited to be here tonight with Mayor Fernando Shipley, former mayor of Globe, Arizona, current Globe, Arizona City Council member. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. Behind the scenes, we were having a conversation, having a little chat, and we are both Flynn Brown fellows.
Yes, we are.
We were in the same class.
Mhm.
I can't remember exactly what the date of that class was. It was the very first class for the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership Flynn Brown Fellowship. And so I'm just so excited to have you, Mayor Shipley, here on the show tonight to have a conversation about statesmanship and what that means and what leadership means.
Great. I'm honored to be here, especially with you.
So I wanted to start out just by maybe having you talk about how did you get into politics? How did you decide to run? Did you run first as council member and then as a mayor, first as mayor? Like,
Mhm.
what was your path to that?
Well, actually, if I look back at my childhood, even, I was always one of those people that thought things should be, like could be better, could be improved. And so I was always the guy that would raise my hand or step forward and try to do something or volunteer. My first kind of into politics, I would consider I was 24 years old and got on my homeowners association. Whew. You think
Wow.
politics is tough at city level, try a homeowners association. But when I moved to Globe, and I moved here to start my business, I'm a state farm agent, and I noticed that Globe um, was very tied to mining. And so as mining went, so did the local economy. And I felt like if we weren't doing something to diversify the economy and bring other things in, that my business would suffer. And so as I started attending meetings and stuff, I started to realize that city council was a place where you could make an impact on how your city operates. And actually, the mayor at that time asked me to run for mayor. And well, I'd never been on a city councilman or any kind of elected official, and so I'm like, well, boy, you can't. I can't run for mayor. But the more I looked at it, I decided to run for council, and I won. And I served as a councilman from 2002 until 2008. And at that time, we were doing 2-year terms, and everybody ran at the same time. So I won 3 terms as a councilman, and then I felt like it was my time, and so I ran for mayor in 2008. And then at that time, the voters changed it to a 4-year staggered term. So I served as mayor from 2008 to 2012, and then I lost an election. I know you're going to ask me a question about some things, the challenges, and so that'll come up then. And I stayed out for about 6 years. I do a lot of other things, but I saw an opportunity to come back as a councilman, which is humbling. But I came back as a councilman, and I've been back now this is my 5th year back. So I got elected in 2018, and then, so here I am, going just a little over 16 years now.
Because we served together at the same time as mayors.
Yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you're not originally from Globe.
No, no. In fact, one of the compliments I get is they want to know what canyon I was raised in. So that means they consider me a local now, but I'm not. I came here to start my agency as a state farm agent.
And so you are not only a mayor, now currently a council member, but you're also a business owner in your community as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We might touch a little bit on that, how it is to how is it, or what challenges do you have or maybe not have being a business owner at the same time as being an elected official and having to kind of maybe navigate the different policies and stuff. So that might be something that we touch on later or chat about.
Sure. Because there are issues that come with the business and being elected. So yes.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to really talk about today, we were chatting about just the way things are in national politics and how divisive things get to be. And I truly believe, and maybe I'm just biased, but I do believe that the key to moving forward is with the mayors. Mayors are elected usually in a nonpartisan fashion. You have to talk to everybody. You can't just talk to a small group of people to be elected. And you have to have a viewpoint that encompasses the totality of the situation, everybody, you know? And sometimes you might not necessarily like the majority or what's happening, but you do have the responsibility of making sure that the conversation that you're having at the dais is civil, and is constructive. I wanted to see if you could speak to any type of an issue that you might have had when you were mayor that was like highly divisive, and how you were able to bring the parties together, all the parties, not just one or two, but there's so many different stakeholders, including the council that you were leading. And what exactly did that take?
Well, probably the hardest one I had to deal with. Actually, I wasn't able to really bring us together. So the best that I could do is to give everybody an opportunity to make sure everybody was heard, and I was really stuck to that. So what happened is, so back in 2000, so I became mayor in 2008, and if you think back, that's when we had the housing crisis and mortgage companies and the economy just went in the tank.
Yes.
So in Globe, we're traditionally a copper mining town. And so one of the things that I noticed is while mining was doing great and Globe was doing great because mining was doing great, the rest of the economy seemed to be not doing great. So banks didn't want to loan. So we're doing great, but trying to get the system to move forward and take advantage of it was difficult because our timing was almost always seemed to be the opposite. So we were doing great, but the economy tanked. Nobody wanted to loan money. Everybody was pulling back. Um, well, the government or the state government was started cutting everything, every education, highways. They cut our funding for the cities, our highway user funds. So everything was going down. The only thing that wasn't going down was corrections. So the state increased its budget for corrections. And so they had put out this RFP, which is a request for proposal. And they said that they wanted to create, I can't remember how many more prison beds in the state of Arizona, because the argument was that the state of Arizona was spending money to house their prisoners in other states, like Oklahoma was one of them, Texas was another one. And so that money would come back in house, the taxpayers would save money, and it would create jobs in Arizona. Okay, well, if I was the governor, I wouldn't prioritize corrections, but I wasn't the governor. I was the mayor of Globe. And so there was a company that came in and made a proposal to create 350 new prison beds in the city of Globe. Now, that wouldn't have been my first choice, but we looked at it and it was going to bring several jobs into the area. They were going to need to increase their infrastructure, but we had no sewer service out there. And so they had to do a package plant. And so that was going to cost them a fair amount of money. Plus, they were going to have to maintain it, and it was going to be ongoing costs. And so I talked to them and I said, look, what about if we build you a sewer line, you guys pay for it, it will be more money, but you're going to put infrastructure through my growth corridor, which would really be beneficial to us, and we'll support you with a resolution of support so to bring these jobs in. And I thought everybody was happy. This is great. The rest of the economy is tanking, and Globe's got this opportunity to build infrastructure, and create jobs and bring them in. And it was kind of off to the outskirts. So a lot of people didn't even know we had a prison here. So like, okay. So we went ahead and supported it. And there was a small group of people, and this is a very, very valuable lesson. Okay, so just a small group of people, and you think, there's just 8 of them, and they got a point, but this is the better good for the city. So I didn't take them as serious as I should have. They organized, they knocked on doors, they sent letters, there was a lot of misinformation that was put out, but it worked, and it got this coalition of people together. And so and this is what I did. My goal is not to get my will done. My goal is to do whatever I believe is the best interest of the community. And I do feel like people ask me, well, what do you think about running? And I said, look, if you're there for the betterment of the people, regardless if it's better for you or not individually, like I feel like, yes, if I did this, I would personally benefit, but the community would benefit more if we did this. If I can't put my own need aside for the better need of the community, then I kind of, in my opinion, I have no business being a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they're like one of the topics you're going to probably talk on is special interest or activists. And I feel like, they're looking to get their little piece of the pie done, but we have to look at the whole community and how it affects the community. So they sent people in to talk to me, to lobby me. I would talk to them. I would listen to them. One thing I learned is no one hears you until you listen first, right? If you don't listen to them, you don't hear them out, you don't let them get it off their chest, they are never going to hear you. And so that's the first thing to do, is just let them talk, let them explain, let them get it off their chest, let them share their concerns with you. And after you do that, then you can start to bring more information in and then get somewhere.
That is key right there. That should be a bullet point. No one is going to listen to you until you listen to them first.
Exactly. And in customer
Is,
service, I have a business. So sometimes people come in and they're really upset about something. And I can't tell them, well, you're wrong, you just don't understand this. You can't do that. You just go, okay, you hear them out, and then okay, I understand why you would feel that way. But and then I show them where we're at. And if you can give them options, that's also another thing. Instead of saying it's my way or the highway, even if it's just a small option, it makes them feel listened to. It shows that you care. And so that's really important when you're an elected official representing people. You need to let them. I always tell them, well, we're sorry, Mayor. We know you're so busy and you're really important. And I'm like, the way I look at it is, I work for you. You're my boss. And I truly do believe that. I try to be a servant leader, and I don't know if I do a great job, but I try to.
Well, I think you do a great job, which is one of the reasons why I invited you to be on the Mayor's Community Policy Trust. You use the term servant leader, and that is not a term that is well used or used often in defining how people go about their role, especially when it comes to an elected official. And I want you to know that I do appreciate that. I think there is a difference between a public servant and a servant leader. I think those are two different things. And I think that servant leaders lead by example. They also don't necessarily lead from the front. Sometimes they lead from the back, right?
Right.
And so I think that there's just a difference there. You brought up activists, and that was definitely one of the questions that I had for you. I started off as an activist. I still consider myself to be an activist with certain things, but I have grown to understand that there is a difference between activism and statesmanship. And then in between those two things, there's like the elected official and politics and all the rest of those types of things. You mentioned that activists are kind of looking at one thing, and mayors look at other things. Can you maybe go into depth a little bit more about that?
Well, so I was talking to one of my friends, and he was going to run for office, and he was very much a single issue person because of his industry, the industry he represents. So he's there to advance the needs of his industry, right? And that could be a special interest leader, but I kind of can sometimes think of activists kind of in the same vein, because they have such a narrow focus on what they're trying to accomplish that they're not looking at the unintended consequences. The worst thing about being an elected official is you go to fix a problem, right? And you think, okay, well, we could fix it just by doing this. Well, if that causes 6 other problems, you're not ahead, you're behind. And that's one of the things that's really important about the process of being an elected official and how you make decisions. That's why things have to be done in public, and because you don't know all the answers, right? And when you're having these discussions in front of the public, and especially a lot of times we'll take action right away. But one of the things that we try to do in Globe is we try to bring an issue in front of us more than once before we have to decide on it. That way, because a lot of times the public, they're busy. I mean, they got to get Johnny to basketball practice and Susie's got to go somewhere. And so it's not like they don't care. They're just really, really busy. And unfortunately, a lot of times people don't pay attention to the public policy making process until they're angry or afraid.
Yeah.
And that's what people use to divide us, is fear and anger, right? But if we're more engaged and we work together, and you address these things in public, I might not know something and someone will say, hey, I was watching your meeting, or I was there and they said this, but did you know that this happens, or this works this way, or this is other opportunity? And then you can get better policy, better results. And so back to when we were doing this private prison thing, every time they sent someone into me, I would show them like all the things that we looked at and what considerations we were looking at, and that they were going to spend this money and build a sewer system through our growth corridor. And by the time they left, everybody I had talked to said, wow, I'm with you. And so they stopped sending people to me. But when we would have a council meeting and I was mayor, I would, if anyone wanted to address the council, I would recognize them and I would let them speak, and I encourage them to, because I feel like it's our process. And one of the greatest gifts of our system is, theoretically, we have an opportunity to be heard. And I don't care if you come in totally against my position. The fact that you are there, the fact that you're engaged, the fact that you took time to participate, I am proud of you. I am so happy that you're there. And it's okay if we don't agree, but that's, I feel like if anything happened good out of that process, when I left office, people realized how generous I was with letting them all have their say in a meeting.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, when you mentioned that, it took me back to, I know that I had been on council for 2 terms, was a total of 8 years. And it's interesting because I wasn't sure that I was going to run for my second term, but then something happened and I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, 8 years is enough. I was thinking about moving on to something else. And I sat through a meeting where the then mayor, it was a huge community issue. You had so many people there. There were people who were primarily their first language was not English.
Mm-hmm.
But I had encouraged them to come and talk about the issue because it was impacting them, and they were citizens here in the city of Flagstaff. And it was mentioned that we kind of need to speed. I don't know the exact words, and I'm sure it's on the tape if people want to go back. But it was basically that we need to wrap it up because we had important business to get to, important city business that was waiting for us to get to on our agenda. And I was appalled because in my mind, I'm like, the most important business that we have as an elected body representing people is to talk to those people.
Yes.
The most important business. Everything else can come after that. And we have plenty of time. The meeting goes until the meeting ends, or until you call it and come back the next day. I've been in meetings before. One time I was in a meeting that started at 2:00 in the afternoon. It went till 2:00 in the morning. We came back and started the meeting at 8. That meeting went until 10. We came back the next day and started at 8, and we finished the meeting at 12. Right? It had to do with water. And it was that many people who wanted to have a conversation with us and give us their input. And then I've also been in meetings where people are like, well, that person said the same thing. That's probably true, but but the next person still gets their 3 minutes, or they still get the opportunity. Yes. And it might be the same thing, but it also might be you have so many people saying the same thing that, there might be a reason for that.
Right. And it's amazing how much power the chair of a meeting has. And it can be used fairly or unfairly, right? I've actually sat in a meeting where people drove a long distance to be at a meeting to address a topic. and the chair called for call to the public at the very beginning of the meeting. So before we ever had any discussion on that topic, before they knew what we were going to say, before they knew all the information, the chair basically said, that was your opportunity to participate. You chose not to. You are not now participating on this topic at this time. I could never do that and would never do that, but it's within the chair's prerogative to do that. So the mayor or the chair of a committee actually does have quite a bit of power as far as who they recognize, for how long they recognize them, and how they run their meetings.
And I think that, I'm sitting here thinking about another situation that I was in. I was not an elected official, but I had an opportunity to sit there and witness it, where there was definitely going to be a lot of people in support of the issue. And there was going to be a handful of people who were not in support of the issue, right? And I would say a handful of people. And what I witnessed really made me sad for the overall process. And I think it was because depending on what the topic is, you could be on either side of it. And so if you are on a side that I would say is like the winning side or the most popular side, you should do your best to make sure that those that do not agree get a chance to publicly state their disagreement. Because you never know when you're going to end up on a different issue that's just as important to you as the one that you're winning with, and roles will be in reversed, right? And then you won't have the opportunity to state what you really, really want to say, and you have driven hours or miles to be able to have your 3 minutes. And I was just sitting there watching that, and I was like, the system works best when we are all allowed to participate in it.
Yes.
And we need those of us who have access and that are looking around. If you see people who do not have the same access as you, regardless of what your opinion is about what they're going to say, you should be fighting for them to have just as much access to the public participation process, because you should want the best process there is all the time.
Right. And if you're afraid of information, I mean, the more information you have, the better odds that you're going to make better decisions. Right. So, and that's the other thing that I do a lot is, when I'm trying to solve a problem, I like to try to do a grassroots. I like to bring in people before we formulate the answer. I like to bring people in that are affected by the topic, or interested in the topic, or passionate about the topic, and not just people who look at it like I do. I want people in the room that think differently than me. And in fact, I used to call sometimes, I had to say, "Hey, Terry," and they're like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing, Fernando?" I'm like, "Hey, we're going to talk about this, and I know that you look at this differently than I do, so I really think you should probably be there." Oh, wow, thank you. And that is part of how you start statesmanship. It's respecting other people's points of view, respecting their right to participate, their right to have input, their right to have an idea. And so I bring them in early, because honestly, if they have a very valid point, I don't want to be sunk down the road after we think we have the answer. I want to know. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. So how do we deal with this? And then all of a sudden, everybody's involved in coming up with a solution, instead of us waiting to the end, picking sides, and then going to war. And I don't think that's a very good way to solve problems. And another thing that I think is really important is that me and you may be passionately on opposite sides on a certain issue. Never make it personal, because it shouldn't be, right? It's attack the policy, attack the idea, offer other ideas, but don't attack the person, because tomorrow we're going to need each other. And if we can't talk to each other, or we won't look at each other, we're not helping anybody. You just basically cripple yourself.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Mayor, because that is something that, it's been interesting really watching politics over the course of time that I have been involved, since the beginning, now toward, decades later, not decades, wait, maybe stop, 13, 14 years later. Let me stop real quick. Um, but it has been very interesting, the attacks, right? It used to be that you could have a civil conversation. You could totally 100% disagree. And it was about how to get to the best outcome for
Mhm.
everybody, right? Now when you look at the conversation has to do with personal attacks. And you
Mhm.
kind of look at that, you're like, well, how is that addressing the issue of water, the issue of immigration, the issue of small business, the issue of
Mhm.
rural broadband? Like, how are we addressing those issues? Which, again, is one of the reasons why I wanted to have a conversation with the mayors.
Mhm.
Because mayors, I truly think if mayors were in charge, a lot of stuff would be different. Because mayors are elected in a nonpartisan fashion, I have been sad to see lately that there are some mayors that are, I guess, more partisan in appearance than others, because that's also something new.
Mhm.
As a mayor, you have to get 51% plus one of the vote.
Mhm.
So you don't normally hang out with one group of people. You talk to as many people, many different ideas. You have cabinets that are made up, committees that are made up of different people thinking differently
Sure.
from different backgrounds. And so, you mentioned something about one issue candidates.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you would be willing to expand on that, because I do see that as something that is now happening where there's one issue that people are passionate about. There's a candidate that says, I'm going to be your champion. And I'm like, that's great. But when you get on council, in addition to that issue, you got to talk about police, fire, streets, libraries, social infrastructure services, um, not just that one issue.
Right. Exactly. And one issue, you may not even get your way. So you think you're going to go in there and I'm gonna kick butt and we're gonna get this guy out of here because he's horrible. And then you got to, on our town, you have to be able to count to four. Four. If you can't count to four, you're not going to get much done. And so the problem is that yes, that might be an important issue, and it might be controversial, and you might have the support of the community for that issue. But if you let them down and everything else, and you're not there, you're not focused, or you don't care, you're not serving the community. And that's a big responsibility. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't get rich being a mayor or a councilman. In fact, it costs me money. The year I lost my election as mayor, I made $35,000 more that year because I was actually in my role as an agent selling more, and so I was a big sacrifice to be a mayor and to be a councilman. And sometimes, especially when you're a business person, some people feel like it's fair game
Mm-hmm.
to punish you for a decision they did not like by taking it out on your business. And that
Yeah.
is a hard, I know a lot of great people that would be great leaders that are business people, and they just won't do it. They won't step forward because they don't want to put their business at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a tough thing because we want the people, the best people, regardless of what walk of life they come from. And and a lot of people just won't take that risk if they feel like they have too much to lose.
And I think that's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was mayor, I actually, before the pandemic hit, I had four different jobs total, right? I remember that one of my jobs, I worked at a roadhouse, a bar.
Mm-hmm.
I was DJing at night,
Mm-hmm.
Thursday through Sunday. And someone took offense to that. They're like, well, the mayor shouldn't be working in the bar. And I was like, well, I agree. But the mayor's salary is such that I have to have all these other jobs.
Right.
And I'm working from night because they were like, the mayor should always be available. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you know where to find me,
Mm-hmm.
on these nights. I'm literally in the DJ booth
Right.
from 9 until 2. I go, but also most people don't necessarily need a mayor or don't need to be front and center from 9 until 2. But if you want to have a meeting, I am definitely available. You stop by and chat with me. One of the things I'm really excited about is that the city of Flagstaff, we started a conversation before I left. And it was interesting too, because you had an individual on council who I would say probably had came from a different background, a different walk of life, who when the conversation was brought up of the pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were very adamant that it is a gift, it's a privilege to serve. and that we should be grateful to have the opportunity all day, every day. And I 100% agree with that. It's absolutely a privilege to serve. It was humbling to be the mayor of the city of the town that I grew up in. There
Yes.
is no better job than that, to have the trust of, your community to lead them. And one of the things I looked at this person who had a different background. Like I said, I grew up in the projects here in
Mm-hmm.
Flagstaff, came from a very humble, I guess, beginning. And I was like, you're right. It is absolutely an honor to serve, but it should be something that anyone should be able to do if the community chooses them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a full-time job with a lot of responsibilities. Even though we have a city manager, council is in charge of the direction of the policies that are set. Council needs to be out talking to people, being part of the community, being in the community to best serve the community. And so you would want your council people, or the people who serve you, to be able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and to have to be able to do that and to be able to eat. And so council did, after I left, the next council did raise the salary
Mm-hmm.
for council members. They split it in two, so the full raise will come with this next election. But I also think it opens up the opportunity, if you're a school teacher, if you're this, if you're that, if you want to take a term off and go and serve your community, put your name out there. I think that it opens up a diversity of people who can actually serve, because before, really, you had to have a certain income, or you had to
Right.
have a trust fund, or you had to have a partner or a spouse that was willing to carry you so you could support your community.
And I really see that at the state legislature. I think they get paid $24,000 a year. I
Hmm.
mean, if you're not independently wealthy, retired, or like you said, maybe have a spouse or somebody that supports you, um, how do you do that? You can't live off $24,000 a year, and then they're expecting you to be here and there. And one of the biggest complaints I would get is, "We didn't see you at the parade," or "We didn't see you at this," and "We didn't see you at that." And I'm like, I can't be 10 places at one time. And so I would say it nicely, but I'm like, I have to pick and choose. I have a family, I have children. And that's the other thing too. If you have kids, it's, when you're having that meeting till 2 a.m. and it's a school night, it's tough on the family. You have to have support. You have to have other people that help you to make that happen. And you're right. There are a lot of people that they would be great, and they're good servants. They have a good mind for their community, but they can't spare that time or the money. If I have to pay a babysitter so I can go to the city council meeting, maybe I can't be a city council person. And so
Mhm.
I think that's something that we really. So for all the listeners, the next time you see on the ballot to give the legislators a raise, vote yes, so we can get some other people in there that aren't independently wealthy or retired.
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely. I ran for LD6. In
Mm-hmm.
looking back at it, I was at a different place in my life, right? So I had the ability to do that. But in full disclosure, I had a twin brother that lived down in the Phoenix area,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to be like, surfing on his couch,
Right.
because that was the only way you were going to
Yeah.
able to pencil that out. I mean, you literally have to be independently wealthy, have family members that are okay with your hobby, or it's just difficult. And when you look at a base pay of, I think it's the 24,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then I guess with travel you could bump it up to 36. There's a reason why our state representative, the makeup of our state representatives are what it is.
Right.
There's just a reason, because you literally have to take a vow of poverty.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then we complain because we
Mm-hmm.
look at the fact that we haven't been able to address water. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't been able to address education. We haven't been
Mm-hmm.
able to address rural broadband, those types of things. But then you look at the fact that maybe we don't have our best people
Mm-hmm.
down there noodling this,
Right.
And maybe
Or
if we
or
had the
maybe
best,
not everybody's represented there. Yes.
yeah, maybe not everybody's
Mm-hmm.
represented there, or maybe we just need
Mm-hmm.
better talent, more
Right.
talent, something like that, right?
When I thought about running, the per diem was $40 a day. And I'm thinking, okay, well, $40 a day per diem? That means, well, you have to eat on $40 a day and you have to be able to spend the night. I'm like, you can't spend the night down there and eat for $40 a day. And yeah, so yeah. And luckily, at the city level, generally we do have to travel here and there once in a while, and
Mhm.
I never turned in my miles, but it's not the same challenge that it is if you were doing something like at the state legislature. It would be really difficult if you weren't independently
Oh
wealthy.
yeah, yeah. It's basically impossible. So I have a question about empathy, Mayor.
Okay. Mhm.
What what do you think, or do you think empathy plays a role in the concept of statesmanship?
I think.
How would you define empathy, and do you think it has a place or a role?
Oh, I think empathy is probably the key to being a statesman. Um, in my business, when I talk to younger people that are thinking about getting into being an agent or anything really, I'm like, well, first of all, I think you have to like people and you have to care about them, because you don't want to fake it. you don't
Yeah,
want to you don't want to get elected to mayor so that you can have a title and be introduced at meetings as an important person, the honorable. That's not why you do it. And if you're doing it for that reason, you're probably not going to be a very good mayor,
yeah,
and you're really going to end up hating the job. But to me, in my business, I tell people, look, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so you got to really start there. That's why I'm saying, like, if you're going to solve a problem, you got to start by listening. You got to understand where they're at. You got to try to put yourself in their shoes and how they feel. And then a lot of times people just aren't very sophisticated. They don't know how the system works. They don't know that there are all these other options or tools or contacts. And so then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, but there actually is something that we can do here. So have you talked to this person? Have you done this? Have you done that? And then you just help them, get them down the road so that they can solve their problem. A lot of times it's miscommunication, but if you don't understand and if you don't care, how are you going to help them? That's like key. And the other thing is like, um, I I make it a point, if I can help somebody, I do. And the reason is because everybody's important, right? The person who serves you your meal, the busboy who takes your dishes away, that's a human being. That's someone's dad. That's someone's mom. That's someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's son. Everybody has value, and you never know. I used to be a busboy, and
yeah,
now I make decisions that affect a lot of people. Do you see what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
you can't and how you treat people, not just the people you think you can get something from or someone who can help you, but how you treat the people below you, to me says everything about what I
mhm,
need to know about you, which is one of the reasons I love you. You treat everybody with dignity and respect, and when you do that, people will move a mountain for you. People are like, well, Fernando, how did you get this done? I'm like, I just I just raised the flag and asked for help, and people just came out of the woodwork to help me, right? But that's because you just pay it forward. You help where you can. You do no harm, right? I
yeah.
don't. Yeah, the world is too small of a place, and life is too short to be in attacking people and trying to get ahead by putting someone else down. If you have to get ahead by putting someone else down, then you're not doing it right.
Mhm. You said so many things there, Mayor. That I just want to just stop and just highlight. Right.
Mhm.
First of all, the concept of no one cares about what you know until they know how much you care. I think that is key. I think that is absolutely key, because people are not going to necessarily share
Mhm.
what the difficulties is or how they think the difficulty could be addressed
Mhm.
until they know that you actually care about what it is they're trying to tell you,
Right.
right? The second thing is everybody matters. You mentioned, the bus boys. I used
Mhm.
to be a maid.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I was a bus boy and got my first job as a dishwasher, when I was 14 at Kathy's Cafe. So I think that's key. I remember one time, I take a lot of selfies. I love taking selfies with people. And someone was like, well, some of the people you're taking selfies with, like, are basically like, they don't have titles and whatever. I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, they do. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, they do. They're
Yes.
moms, they're students,
Mhm.
they're kiddos, they're
Yes.
community members. You know what I mean? Like, they're the bus boy, they're the trash guy. Like, they're people who make up our community. You know, titles, everybody has different titles, and some titles you have forever, and some titles you don't. You know,
Right.
for example, I'm no longer the mayor, but I am Destiny's mom. And I
Right.
think the title far outweighs, title of
Mhm.
mayor, right?
Right.
And so you kind of look at people and you're like, we get caught up a lot on titles and
Mhm.
positions when we should be caught up on character and caring
Mhm.
and community.
I used to teach classes to newly elected officials, and I was part of and I highly recommend it. It's a group called the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. And so they used to send me these postcards when I first got elected, and I would ignore them because it sounded like they were trying to get special rights for Latinos. And I'm like, no, I'm not against Latinos. I'm one, but I don't believe in special rights. I don't want them to get something that no one else gets. That's not the point. To me, I represent everybody. And in Globe, you can't get like elected just because you're Latino. You have to have a higher draw than that. But I'm proud to be Latino. But I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm not going to go to some special group who wants special things for this group. And so the vice president of State Farm in our area, he knew me from I used to deliver reports to him when I was just a little peon at State Farm, and he got to know me. And he says, "Fernando, I heard you're a councilman for the city of Globe." I go, I am." He goes, "What about Naleo?" And I'm like, they send me these cards. He's like, "Is that what you think it is?" I'm like, "Isn't it?" He's like, "No, no, no. You're going. We're a sponsor. We're going to send you in one of our spots." What I found was people who were truly passionate about their communities, helping their communities, who wanted to do the best they could. But some of them came from these areas that were very poor. They couldn't afford to send you to training to be a better leader or a better school board member or a better councilman. And so they created a fund to help train you to better represent your constituents and bring more opportunities to them. And I'm like, it's nonpartisan. And so I'm like, wow. And then the people that are in there, the questions that they ask, their passion, their commitment, I'm like, oh my God, wow, these people are amazing. And then at some point I asked a lot of questions, so they started noticing me. And I ended up got to the point where they asked me to come teach classes. And one of the classes I had to teach was actually, I was supposed to teach lessons learned, which was like the school of hard knocks. So, okay, Mayor, what did you learn the hard way? I'm like, well, I learned a lot of things the hard way. But so I'm like, sure, I'll go. So we were doing this thing for all newly elected officials, so it was congressmen and school board members from towns that were 300 people and so all levels of government. And so I was going to do this class, and they called me like 2 days before, and they said, Mayor, the vice mayor of Houston was going to do this class on navigating through bureaucracy, but she's now not going to be able to come. Can you switch and you do her class? And I'm like, and of course, me being me, I said, sure. I hung up the phone. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say? And then what I realized is like bureaucracy actually has a purpose, right?
Mhm.
It's to protect you from the tyranny of the majority, right? So you get the majority and they're like, oh, we're going to tear down everything everybody else has done, undo it. And then it's just we create this horrible problem, right? And so it's like a pendulum. Unfortunately, a lot of our problems are like that, right? So we have a problem, so we go this way. And then we go to fix it, or we go this way. And so we never
Mhm.
get here somewhere. And so I decided that what the best way to navigate through bureaucracy was to have people want to help you. So, how do you get people to want to help you? You start by being a decent human being. That's what you do. You
Yeah.
respect other people and you respect their time. Okay, I may not be able to get to Senator Kelly, but I know you. Do you see what I'm saying? And if I say, well, I don't want to talk to Coral, I want to talk to Senator Kelly. Well, boy, they're missing the boat, aren't they? They really are, because you are one of those gate people. You are one of those access points. And if you go in and you treat the receptionist like trash, like she's not worthy to dust the dust off your shoes, do you really think you're going to get anywhere? Hello? You don't disrespect somebody that helps me do my job and then think that I'm going to want to answer the phone. I had this young guy, and he was really smart. Had the answers to all the world's problems. And I'm like, and I think I used to be that guy. But
I think we all used to be that person.
and so I'm listening to him, and I'm like, you know, you're right. You do know a lot. You're passionate. You care a lot. But let me tell you something. If no one will answer the phone, what good is it to have all the answers? Right? So you have to build a rapport of, like, I don't know, like a bucket of goodwill. The bigger your bucket of goodwill is, the more you can accomplish, the more people will answer the phone, right? I help people. I don't care what side of the aisle. I don't care if you're the purple party. If you come to me and if it's a good thing and I can help you, I will. If I can connect you, I will. Sometimes I just have to show you your tribe, right? And I'm like, okay, so what are you trying to do? Oh, okay. All right. This is your tribe. These are these people. Call these people. They will help you get to there, right? And a lot of times I don't actually solve the problem. I introduce the people
There you go.
together that solve the problem, right? And I tell people I feel like I'm a manipulator, but I don't really do it in a bad way. But it's like making a recipe, right? If you're going to make chili, you need the beans, you need this, you need that. And so to me, that's kind of how I solve problems. I'm like, I need somebody that cares, is passionate about this, and has the context. I need someone here. And off they go. They're happy. And then the next time I need something, they're like, oh my God, you're wonderful. I go, I am, and.
But what you're talking about is you're talking about relationships, right? And, it's interesting because we talk about bureaucracy. How do you say this word? Because I'm struggling with it.
Bureaucracy.
There we go. We talk about that. And I tell people, I go, to me, when I was mayor, I was very clear. We have a responsibility to be mindful and prudent and respectful of shared resources, taxes and all that, as well as your time. Those two things that we should be making sure we're not wasting it, giving it away nilly-willy. Like, we need to make sure that we're doing it appropriately. But we also need to make sure that everybody is heard and everyone's had an opportunity if they are interested in being part of the conversation, right? Which is why some things take longer, because the protections are there. You do a first reading, you wait 2 weeks, and then you do a second reading just in case, somebody missed the first one. And I think that all those are valid. There is also, though, the need for us to step back and develop the relationships. And sometimes it's interesting because people are like, why are you meeting with these people? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You should have already built the relationships prior to when you're going to need to have the hard discussion about whatever it is, right?
Right.
You are going to just meet for the first time, and it's around a discussion that is super difficult. People are upset. People are mad. Right? You don't know anybody in the room and you haven't developed a relationship, that's going to take even longer now to navigate. Or if you decide to just ramrod it through, it's going to come at a high cost and a high level of negativity.
Right.
Really, we need to be doing more, not only just as elected officials, but human beings in general.
Yes.
Right? We have this. It's great that we're able to use a StreamYard for this. It's great that we have the internet and we have those types of things. Before we even came online, we were talking about, hey, your iPod, you kind of get stuck with the same music. So we need to get back to listening to the radio and getting new music for our iPods and stuff like that. It's about going out and talking to random people and having a conversation. And you know what? They might say something that you don't agree with, doesn't necessarily align, doesn't mean that you have to challenge it and be ugly about it or whatever. But we have lost the art of civility in many respects. And what is it? Debate with civility. Like the debates that you used to have. Yeah, I do different ideas. People are debating it without being uncivil.
So I have a lot of customers, and we're a small town. So they like to come in, right? And I know that we will have very different political views, right, on a topic. And they'll come in and you know they consider me in politics. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, people say, "Oh, I hate politics. Politics is terrible." You know, and I tell them, I actually love politics. I said, but to me, politics is not like the politics that you're probably thinking of, the infighting, the all the yuck stuff that everybody hates everybody and trying to sabotage everybody. To me, politics is the art of having friends before you need them, right? Because everybody wants to be your friend when they need you, but are they your friend before they need you, right? And so to me, that's one of the reasons, like, if I can help somebody, I just do, because will it ever come back to me? I don't know, but to help somebody do something good, and it's going to help them get down the road and make an improvement in our community, our society, or even in just themselves, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You know, I gave a speech at ASU one time, and I told them, I said, they made fun of me. My son made fun of me afterwards, but I was said, you know, like love, right? All of us want to be loved, and it's one of the things that we probably cherish more than anything else. Is the people that we love and the people that love us. But if you treat love like this, like it's some precious thing, and you want to hold on to it, you're actually going to smother it. So to have love grow, you have to give it away, and the more you give it away, the more it comes back to you, right? And so that's, and so I did it all. You know, I was in drama, so, so I kind of hammed it up. But the funny thing is like, I would walk through campus later because my son was involved with this groups thing, and he was always organizing events. So I'd get down there once in a while, and one of the students that would see me from the speech would go,
I love it.
You're like, hey, how's it going? You know, and but yeah, it's you. If you're truly passionate about helping and you care about people, you can get so much more done. And we're being trained. Okay, so unfortunately, cable is not really our friend, right? Because if we're conservative, we're watching a very conservative, slanted point of view. They're training you to hear things that are key indicators that this is the enemy. And the same thing on the liberal side. Oh, well, this is the cues, and this is how you know that they're not on our team, right? But you know what? The people I know people that are conservative that vote for the other guy, and people that are liberal that vote for the other guy. But we're human beings. We care about our families. We care about our communities. All we want to do is do better, to leave something better for our children, to help our community be a good place. We pretty much all want the same thing, and we're being trained to discount the other, that they're the enemy, and it's not. And if to me, the way I get past that, even though they got their talking points and they've been trained how to do something, I hear them out. I listen to them, and I ask, instead of fighting with them or arguing with them or debating with them, I ask them questions. I ask them questions to open their line of vision so they see more broadly. And once they see more broadly, it's amazing how much agreement we can get, right? So one word I hate, and well, I don't hate it, but I'm not a big fan of the word compromise. Because to me, compromise sounds like I got to give up my principles to get somewhere, right? So I prefer to look at it common ground. Okay, you're kind of over here and I'm kind of over here, but if we identify the common ground and we just capture all the common ground together, it's amazing how far down the road we can get, and how much improvement we can get, and how much we can get done before we even disagree. And it
I
shouldn't be
love
this
that.
all or all
I
or
love that.
yeah.
And common ground instead of compromise. I absolutely love that term. That's brilliant.
Well, I'm sure somebody thought of it before I did.
I'm like, the word that I absolutely dislike
Mhm.
is nonpartisan.
Mhm.
Like, I dislike that greatly. Um, when I was mayor, it seems like as mayor, we didn't hear the word nonpartisan because everything was nonpartisan, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden this word nonpartisan has popped up. And I'm like, if you have to say it, now I have to sit here and think about, I have to question it. Like, why are we saying it?
Mm-hmm.
At the local level, as mayor, as city council members, you're elected in a nonpartisan fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So the word really should not even be coming up.
Right. Right.
Like the fact of the
Doesn't
matter
matter
is
what
that
party you're in.
yeah,
It's irrelevant. Yeah.
yeah, it's irrelevant. You're like, you are here to represent your community, period, in this story. And so the word nonpartisan, I don't know, it just bugs me. I love common ground rather than
Mm-hmm.
compromise. Because a lot of people, when you do think about compromise, I'm compromising my values,
Mm-hmm.
my principles, you know, um, I'm giving up something
Sure.
because I mean, I don't want to give anything, but common ground. I think that is an excellent term.
And so so when I ran, I was councilman for District 6, which I am again now. Um, and so we have districts, and we represent, some run at large for the whole city, but we have districts. So when I ran for mayor, I I talked to one of my friends, and he started out being against me. He thought that I was doing something that was going to destroy the community. And what happened is we had an affordable housing project that was going to go in right by his neighborhood, which is also my neighborhood, but I'm across the highway. So um, and he had all these objections to it's going to be this riffraff and drug users, and there's not enough water, and the roads weren't going to be safe. And so I sat with him and I said, okay, here's the promise I will make to you. We will address every single one of those issues. And if it's truly not a good thing, I will support you in trying to stop this project. But if not, I expect you to support me in moving this project forward. And at the time, we had a city manager that he kind of sensed that this was going to be kind of controversial. So he would try to like play this little game of kind of hiding it so that those people wouldn't show up. He didn't want the naysayers to show up and try to, to wreck this project. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If we're going to get this project over the line, we're going to do it in broad daylight, and we're going to ask the people who don't agree with this to be present and to share their point of view, because I feel like that's really what we're supposed to do. That's our job. That's kind of what we raised our hand and said that we would honor. And for us to try to play some game and do it over a long weekend when people won't pay attention to the agenda and won't bother to show up so we can just hurry up and pass it while no one's looking, that's not right. I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I'd rather take all the arrows in the world and have people be mad at me than to play a game like that and try to do something behind someone's back. I don't believe in that. But so now I decided I'm going to run for mayor. And anyways, we became really good friends, and he trusted me, even though he's on a different political team. He I was gonna support this project, which he thought was a horrible thing, but I was very honest with him. We looked at everything together. I never tried to hide anything from him. I always made sure that they were included in the meetings, and even when they tried to sneak a meeting in, I would call them and say, hey, they're trying to sneak this one in, you might want to get your people to show up. And they would. And what happened is we built a lot of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that trust means a lot. So when you're trying to solve a problem, I've had people call me that know that they think differently. They vote for a different person than I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you do realize? And they're like, yeah, we do. And you want me to come to speak to your group? And they're like, yes. I could get this person who's, more, has a better, higher position than I do, right? And thinks more like you to come present. And they're like, nope, they don't want them. They want you. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, why? And they said, because they know you'll tell them the truth. And I'm like,
And
wow.
that is a seriously high compliment when you have a group that wants you even though you might not be politically aligned, or you might have voted against something that perhaps
Mhm.
they were in support of, but
Mhm.
they want you to come and talk.
Mhm.
That means you're doing something right, Mayor.
Well, so I get my friend to run. Okay, and now we got this issue that comes before council, and so his belief is that he represents the district. Okay, so his attitude is, I have to do that of which my constituents believe, right? So he does this, you know, and like, well, my constituents want me to vote no on that. I'm like, okay. And that's how he represents his district. Okay, well, when I ran, I said, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is where I'm going. This is what I promise you. This is what I can't promise because I have no control over that. I'm not going to promise you something that I can't deliver on, right? But I will promise you that I will be fair, I will be honest, and I will act in the best interest of the community. So when a hard topic came, I basically represented my values because I ran on my values, right? So, and his attitude was, they want, these people want me to vote this way. Who's right? You see what I'm saying? So I
Mhm.
think that in a way, I feel like we're both right because that was his values. He said, I will represent your point of view, even if I don't personally agree with it. And even if I think maybe there might be a better answer for the city. Oh, well, I didn't run that way. I ran on my values, and
Yeah.
that's who I said I was. So I don't know who's right.
And I think when you look at that type of situation, I go back to
Mm-hmm.
the difference maybe of, there's a difference when you are a council member, especially if you're a council member that has been elected to represent a district. I was always a council member at large, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's value in districts and having people run in districts.
Mm-hmm.
I think is, one of the things the city of Flagstaff, I wish we had just districts here
Mm-hmm.
where I live. Um, but I also sit there and look at what is the totality of it, right? And so I think there is more probably freedom if you are not in a district
Mm-hmm.
to be able to vote, to be able to consider all the input,
Sure.
to be able to vote toward what is going to happen. I think if you are in a district, what you're looking at is what the district might want and the individuals in the district might want that you
Mm-hmm.
are representing might actually cause greater harm to outside of the district.
Right.
And but again, you're there to represent a certain group. So to me, that is more of even an activist lens, right? Because I know that when I was an activist, and I want to be very clear, activists are extremely valuable. That our
Sure.
society needs them.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing great has moved forward, especially when it comes to human rights and civil rights, has moved forward just because a politician said they wanted to. It took activists saying, "Hey, we need for you all to address this. There's something bad's happening here." But I know when I was an activist, the only thing I had to care about was my issue, right? That was
Mm-hmm.
it, and that was all. I didn't care about anything else but this issue, and I wanted the issue fixed. And I didn't care if my fix that I was proposing was going to necessarily. I didn't know if it was going to hurt other people, and that really wasn't my preview, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
focused on this issue. When I came on council, I came on as an activist, and I got on council. The issue that I was involved with was settled before I got on council. I was sworn in for a 4-year term, and it was like water, police, fire. What? You know what I mean? It was like, okay, it's like I got to learn quick and in a hurry because
Yes.
none of that stuff had ever like crossed my mind.
Right.
Fast forward, I'm now a mayor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I end up with a council member, and we're having a conversation at the dais. And this council member says, I was elected because of this issue, this one issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was elected. Literally. That's what the council person said. And I was like, yeah, but you're here for another 3 years and 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like your term is 3 years and 11 months, not just the 1 month that it took us to deal with this issue.
Right.
And I remember I had another person on council who was basically a one issue. And I was like, hey, you realize that there's all this other stuff
Mm-hmm.
that we do too. Like this issue
Right.
is very, very important, and we are working it through the system. And I have no doubt that we are going to address it. But I need for you to pay attention to these other issues because you represent the city, and the city deserves to have 7 city council members focusing on all the issues and voting on all the issues with an understanding of all the issues. You know?
Right.
So
Right.
as a mayor, I was like, wow, I guess as a mayor, you don't have the luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Or maybe it's not the luxury. As a mayor, you have the viewpoint of the totality.
Right. You have to look at the whole picture. Yes.
The whole picture, and you are in charge of like the whole
Mm-hmm.
picture and moving the whole picture forward. And you don't necessarily have the ability just to be being an activist or activizing around this one issue,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to pay attention to the whole thing and how everything connects.
So when I was on the executive committee for the Arizona Leagues of Cities and Towns, and they asked me to start teaching classes, and so one of the classes that I was teaching was how to be effective, and I told them, I said, I cheat, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I cheat. I said, so I was able to get a lot of things done when I was mayor, because I got to know each one of my council members personally. I got to know what bothered them, what they cared about, what they were passionate about, you know what I mean? I got to know them as human beings, right? And so now when I had, because as you know, a mayor has a really great spot to drive the agenda from, right? A councilman can't drive the agenda like a mayor can or a city manager can, right? So if you don't want something and you don't feel like it's ready, you can really push that city manager back in the corner and make them do more homework and then bring it back, right? Or you can say, I want to get moving on this, and it pretty much ends up on the agenda, right? Whereas as a council member, you don't really have that kind of ability to drive the agenda. And so I would, at any topic, I would go, okay, Marianne isn't going to like this. Terry's not going to like this. Now, this person will, this person will, this person. So in my head, I got a 3-2, right? So now I go to the one that I'm not so sure about where they're at, right? So I'll say, hey, Bob, I'm working on a topic and I'd really like to have a cup of coffee and kind of pick your brain and get some input from you. And now all of a sudden I would like, oh, okay, this is where they're at. I'm like, put it on the agenda, right? Because now in my mind, we got the votes to get this done. Because I don't want to put things on the agenda that's going to be 4-3 all the time and everybody's fighting. I mean, we got so much to do. Why would we divide the council and spend our time fighting when we can move the things that we can move, right? So got lemons, you make lemonade, right? That's the way I look at it.
You know,
Like,
I think that's so interesting, because I know when I ran for mayor, before I ran for mayor, I went and I reached out to some of the previous mayors, I was kind of trying to figure out, do I really want to run for mayor? And what is their viewpoint? Like, these were individuals that have been highly successful as mayors here in Flagstaff. And I remember, so I talked to 3 different mayors that came from 3 different generations of mayors, I'm going to say, right? And each one of them, now that I know them, each one of them comes from a different political viewpoint, right?
Right.
Okay, like they're registered differently, all 3 of them, okay? And they all basically said the same thing to me, and I took that to heart, in their own different ways. But what they said was, they were like, look, the mayor runs the meetings. The mayor sets the tone of the meetings. The mayor is the one that is responsible for the civility of the conversation. They're like, if you want to be a good mayor, when you get elected, the first thing you do is you sit down with each city council member and you find out what their top 2 priorities are for their term.
Mhm.
What are their top 2 priorities? And then, as long as they jive with your moral compass, your principles and values, you make a commitment to help them achieve that.
Mhm.
They're like, so out of 6 city council members, you're going to get 12 ideas. They're like, most likely out of those 12 things that are wanted, you're going to want at least half.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're like, but as long as you are able to support, uplift, and help those council people get what it is that they need to get done during their term, and you let them lead, you let them take the glory, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
then you will be a good mayor.
Yes.
And then they were like, and you should not always be talking. I know when I came in, I made a commitment to my council that I would talk last. I would literally let the conversation and let them talk, and I would talk last. So that way
Mhm.
we could get a chance to hear the conversation so it wouldn't get shut down.
Mhm.
So, and I think only twice I spoke first before my council, and both times I asked permission to do so. And both times they were like, yes, we would like you, Mayor, to talk first on this subject. Right?
Mhm.
There's only 2 times. But so what you're saying to me kind of is along those lines, right?
Mhm.
In understanding what it is your council needs and then helping them be the best council people they can be.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the things that we did, and this was cute because um, we had basically a whole bunch of new people coming into council, and I wanted to get a head start because I wasn't going to be the mayor until we took the next term came in, and so I asked the mayor if we could do a strategic planning I wanted to bring everybody in and do like a brainstorming thing. It's like sky's the limit. Anything you want, let's just throw it on a board. Let's get all the ideas on the board, and then we'll discuss and we'll boil it down and we'll come up with some ideas, and then that'll be kind of like our compass for where we want to go, right? Because I always feel like if you don't know where you're going, I guess it doesn't matter whether you go right or left, right? But if you know where you're going, then when you come to the fork in the road, you're like, oh, well, we got to go this way because
Right.
this is where we're going. But if you don't, then it doesn't really matter. And it really makes you a lot less effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we got we got it. And the mayor that was before me, I mean, he was one of my mentors, and he's actually a great leader. He comes off very docile, but there's a lesson to be learned there. People are not always as they appear. So
Still
don't
water
judge
runs
a
deep,
book
as
by
my
its
grandpa
cover.
used to say. Still water runs deep.
And but he kind of made it like this is why we can't do this, and this is why we can't do that, and we've tried this before, and we tried that before, and this is why we're here. So, and I'm like, and I was very respectful because I wasn't the mayor, and so I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then as soon as we took over and I became the mayor, because I was on the council, now I became mayor. So I'm like, we're doing this again, and we had a weekend strategic plan. You have to invite the public, and you can't really make any decisions. But I said, look, if you could have anything you wanted, where doesn't matter what it costs, whether it's feasible or not. I just want all the ideas. Let's just put them on the board. And at the end of the day, we ended up deciding that our historic downtown was a gem in the rough with a bunch of dirt clods and dust all over it. That if we could do something with that would really help us get moving forward. So we identified like 9 different things that we thought were really important. And I said to him, I said, okay, if at the end of 4 years we do these 9 things, would would you feel like we were a success? And every one of them said, yes. We were done in 9 months. We got that
Common
done.
ground, though, right? That right
Yeah.
there is what common ground does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we were like, and everyone knew. If you would ask them, where are we going with Globe? Where's the city of Globe doing? They were like, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like. I'm like, wow. And so that's having that common vision. And I think one of the other hardest things, especially as an elected official, is when your viewpoint doesn't win, it's really easy to get back and go, I didn't vote for that. I didn't agree with that. That helps no one.
Nobody.
And all you're doing is creating tension and hostility, and then you start to resent each other. That is not productive. You had an opportunity. You present your viewpoints, you present your facts, you framing things, and how you discuss things and how you paint the picture is very important. So if you want to win, practice painting the picture, right? And then sell your picture. But when they select another picture, that now is your picture too. You toe the line and you make it happen, because otherwise you're going to really hurt your own community.
Oh yeah, something like that just recently happened in my community, and I know that I was really appalled. It was definitely a high interest, we call it, I guess, policy question, and it was a 6-1 vote the first time, and it was a 6-0 vote the second time, and then the individual that was the one or the other, went on a campaign about everything that was wrong. And it ended up it ended up going to the voters at the end of the day, and the voters decided on it. But I was like, as a member of a body, you do get to make your case. You do get to have the conversation, and then it's decided. That's why we have this majority thing that happens, right?
Right.
Once it's decided and council has decided how they're going to move forward, it's not that you lose your right as an individual to speak on it, right? But the fact of the matter is you're part of a body that has made a decision, and it's a council directive as to how you're going to move forward. For you to go outside of that and, be polar to it, or to advertise that you're polar to it, really makes a contentious situation even worse, right?
Right.
And the idea is that now that it's gone to the public, it's going to go to the voters or whatever. Now the public can weigh in on it. You've already weighed in on it. Council's already weighed in on it. Because you're a member of council. You move forward as a body. Sometimes it's not a 7-0 vote. Sometimes it's, there are people who are not in agreement. I was on council, but every 2 years it was swinging back and forth. And I know I was on a bunch of those, 4-3? I know I was in the 3, like sometimes I was the 1, right? And so I do think that is detrimental to the overall body and how the body functions.
Right.
But that's probably we'll leave it there, because we are over our hour. It's been such a joy to have this conversation with you, Mayor Shipley. I know that I have admired you as a mayor, admire you as a council person. I love the city of Globe. I had a chance to spend some time with the Rural Policy Institute.
Yes.
What is it, Local First? I was there last year. Absolutely 100% love the community. And I hope to have you back on a future episode of the Mayor's Community Policy Trust.
Well, and you got my number. You know how to get a hold of me. So if you need anything, you let me know. And thank you for the honor of being here, because it means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you. We will be back in 2 weeks with another Mayor's Community Policy Trust. But until then, have a good evening.
Bye.